the 11 Dubcast. I'm Johnny. He's George, and we are back with another week of fun and frivolity. And importantly, it's draft week. So we're going to talk about the NFL draft. We're going to talk a little bit about some Ohio State portal needs. I guess that's the college football version of the draft. And
it's free
not.
agency. No, it's free agency.
It's free
not
agency.
Quite the same thing.
No, not yeah. Some success for some of the non-rev sports, and then some funny stuff going on up there in that school up north. So we'll talk about all that. Let's go ahead and get started with draft stuff, though. And as we do approach the draft this week, starting Thursday night, I guess.
That's right.
Before we get into all of this, I know we've probably talked about this before. How do you feel about the draft being broken up like this, with the first round on Thursday, the second round on Friday, and then everything else on Saturday?
Well, as a hybrid Steelers Bears fan, the fact that the draft is in Green Bay this year makes it inherently terrible. So whatever approach they're going to take, it is just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I can't knock the decision of someone like Josh Simmons, who was planning on attending the draft, to
maybe
decide not to attend.
Maybe he got some hints that he's going to, like Minneapolis or Chicago or something like that. And he's like, screw these guys. I'm not sticking around.
And we'll get into that. But in terms of how they break it up, it's fine to me. I'm at peace with it. I understand why they do it,
Oh yeah, no, it gets wild ratings.
Day 3 is much less palatable, I think, in terms of the fascination of watching than the first 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just, and I mean, that's kind of inherent just because the difference in talent is pretty stark, but it's also the pacing of the third day is just so much more wildly different than the first two, where you're getting a lot more analysis from the draft experts, pick by pick, how these guys are fitting with their new teams, getting profiles on the game. And granted, and we've spoken about this at length, I think, in previous years, where the ESPN in their coverage will do a deep personal dive into whatever trials and tribulations or family issues or struggles or unverified criminal history or whatnot that may be going into some of these guys when they have enough time at their disposal to profile that sort of thing. Whereas you get to day 3 and the picks are just coming in so quickly, so rapidly, mm-hmm. that they're normally 10 guys behind or something where the picks are actually coming in. So they're doing analysis for a guy that went 20 minutes ago that you don't even remember where they fit in, and then they hardly have enough time to really explain where things are going on. So right. Yeah, it isn't a perfect science in terms of how they break it up and pace stuff, but I mean, this is so much more of a huge event relative to the talent pool available than any other sport. I don't really see how they would be able to balance it out more. And as long as we're getting 2 of 3 days that are solid, entertaining coverage, that's good enough for me.
I guess my thing was, and this is when I was, younger, and I guess I had more time to burn. I do miss being able to care about the draft on Saturday and sit and watch and go, oh, this is a thing I can devote a couple hours to or 3 hours to or something like that, and just kind of be interested in it. Whereas now it feels like such an afterthought to the first 2 days. And I don't know. I think the first round doesn't need to be nearly as long as it actually is. I think you could condense it into the first and second round and then be totally fine. And I think it wouldn't lessen the interest or the engagement at all. Obviously it would lessen the ratings, and that's why they're doing it. But for me personally, I don't need 20 minutes between picks. That's stupid to me. I know it's like 15 or whatever it is. But my point
I think it's only 8. I don't
It
even
feels
think it's
like
that
50.
much.
It
I
feels,
know it does.
it feels like 800.
Well, they say 8, and then the pick is in register thing comes in, and then that can be up there for like 5 minutes or something before Goodell actually strolls out and gets booed, and they finally read the pick and everything. So
I will say that the best tradition in the NFL is the booing of Roger Goodell, because A, he deserves it, and B, it's funny. But yeah, I would like to see the first 2 rounds in one package as opposed to splitting it up into 3 days. Anyway, let's talk about some Ohio State players. There is a chance that Ohio State will match the record of players drafted. I think they're going to fall a little bit short of that, but it is interesting to get into it. We're going to talk about that right now. So, a number of Ohio State players are
will say I disagree with you. I think they're going to match it, and I think
they're going to get right there.
I think there's a sliver of a chance that they get lucky and they even set a new record. But it is going to.
I would love that.
A long shot.
I would love that because it would take it away from Michigan. That would be sick.
Actually, Michigan only had 13 last year.
Oh, well, good. Then
so they fell short of even Ohio State's high mark of 14.
All
so
right. Well, then I'd love to hear that.
Georgia 3 years ago broke Ohio State's record in 2004 when they had 15 selected.
Gotcha.
I believe they had 5 first rounders that year. Ohio State is probably not going to get that many, but this is a very loaded draft class relative to the middle rounds of the draft, much as the 2004 class was for Ohio State when they set the record that stood for 18 years. So
that's pretty good.
I think that they're in pretty good because they're not having to rely on a big reason why Michigan's number was as big as it was last year was because they had a lot of guys that went in the late rounds.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Ohio State, they have many players that are slotted to go within the first 160 picks. So rounds 1 through 5. So I don't think that they're going to have to get as lucky in order to get close to tying 15. I think that they're in good position to do it.
Well, let's talk about some of those guys. We're going to talk about every single dude, but we will definitely hit the highlights here. And let's start with Josh Simmons, who I think for a long time was the presumptive, number one. This is absolutely the guy who is going to be taken first off of Ohio State's, alumni here. He's going to go really high in the first round. It feels like he's kind of backed off a little bit. He's kind of fallen a little bit. He's still, Dan and Matt put together the draft projections and where these guys are going to go. He's still at the top of the average draft projection, but he has kind of slipped slightly. I know that maybe some guys are, some teams might be concerned, obviously, about the injury. Right now, it's looking like the latter part of the first round-ish is where the consensus kind of lies. Do you think he's still a first-round talent? Is that a guy, if you were a GM of an NFL team, George, would you take this guy in the first round with your
I think there's 3 players Ohio State has that should be first-round picks.
Okay.
Whether or not they end up being first-round picks remains to be seen. Josh Simmons is one of those players. That's reflected by the fact that the highest mock draft rating for Josh Simmons of what's available right now currently has Simmons going 4th overall to the Patriots,
right?
Which is pretty lofty. And the fact that Simmons is no longer attending the draft speaks to the fact that I don't think he expects to go 4th overall to the Patriots.
Probably not.
However, that I think speaks to you don't just get a 4th overall projection pulled out of nowhere. And there's only 3 of the mock drafts that we're looking at that have Simmons projected to go in the second round. So I would think that he's still going to be a back half of the first round pick. The fact that he's no longer attending the draft for whatever reason, listen, as I said earlier, I can't blame the guy because Green Bay is not exactly a premier travel destination if you're not explicitly going to watch the Bears whoop on the Packers. But it does kind of signal, it is a little bit of a red flag relative to, it's easy to speculate that you might think that he's not getting as much calls or attention from teams that would make him think that he is going to slip a little bit. And given the fact that he missed half of his last season in college with an injury, it stands to reason that there's some teams that are sharing concerns about him not having enough tape at Ohio State where they would feel against high level competition where they would feel good about picking him as a first overall pick. Now, I also have to say that in terms of which lineman I would feel more secure about picking in the first round from Ohio State, Donovan Jackson, given the flexibility that he showed at guard and tackle last year, I feel like I would be more comfortable picking that guy than gambling on the ceiling of Simmons at tackle. So I would think that I am surprised that it doesn't seem like the field of draft experts feels the same way, but I still feel like both of them deserve to be first round picks.
Jackson's interesting to me, and we can talk about him as well, because I think that prior to the college football playoff, I mean, he had a lot of, I think he had a lot of respect as, at his position as a guard, and that was going to get him in a second, third round thing. Then he goes out and he has an incredible playoff. I think only gave up one quarterback pressure or something like that, or he was just unbelievable against some of the best defensive ends in the country, and he played himself into a mid second round. like that's the thing that really that's what surprises me. Like, a lot of these projections are saying mid second round, and I don't think that's significantly different than where he would have been had he just stayed at guard. Like, I think he would have been second or third round. And so I agree with you, man. I think he's really, really, really good. I think some team is going to get him halfway through the second round. Fingers crossed it's the Bengals. And they're gonna make out like gangbusters on that deal, because I really do think he's a first round talent. You can't be that versatile and that good against that stiff of competition and not really prove your mettle. So I'm surprised by that, honestly.
I think he was a preseason All-American at guard, but I don't necessarily think he was living up to that standard for the first half of the season. And then he got put at the tackle position out of necessity. And I think it's important to remember that they were uncertain enough putting him there to begin with that they opted to try Zen Mikowski at left tackle in relief of Josh Simmons in the Nebraska game. That obviously ended up being an enormous disaster, despite Mikowski's effort in relief when Simmons got hurt against Oregon. And then what really put Jackson on the map at tackle before the college football playoff was how he did against Abdul Carter in the Penn State game. So I think there was some optimism about him playing tackle even before he got to the CFP. But then obviously you're right. I mean, his run that he had during the playoff at that position was phenomenal, and frankly, I think above what anybody expected given where he started the year. But I think that he showed enough, and frankly, not enough is getting made of the fact that he did that on the fly when that clearly was not the expectation for him, even when Simmons got hurt, that showed that he deserves to be a first round pick. So I'm reasonably optimistic that he's going to be like one of the last 5 first round picks. But we'll see. It's possible that he slips. But I think that if one of them deserves to slip, it would frankly be Simmons, just because he's coming off of an injury, whereas we've seen Jackson prove more and defy expectations.
Yeah, I agree with that.
More than Simmons has.
Emeka Egbuka is another one that I think is kind of interesting, because, first round seems to be about where half of these draft projections have him at. Early second round is where the other. So it's not like he's being disrespected. I do think it's interesting, though, relative to the other talent in the draft, the other wide receiving talent in the draft. Like, I didn't necessarily expect him to be picked first, but this does not strike me as among the wide receivers, but this does not strike me as a particularly deep wide receiver draft. And so, for him to kind of fall to the back half of the first round when he's literally the most productive wide receiver in Ohio State history, and it doesn't feel like there's any true game breaker in this draft. to me, man, I don't know who else you would get ahead of him. I know Golden's out there. People really like him. Burden from Missouri. People really like McMillan from Arizona. Like, these are all dudes that I understand why, in terms of measurables and all that kind of stuff, they're there. But, like, I don't know, man. To me, he's as sure a thing as all these other guys who have come out of Ohio State, like Olave or, any of the other dudes, Harrison, whoever. Just because of how polished he is top to bottom. He just seems like a no-brainer. I don't know. If I was a team looking for a wide receiver in the first round, Emeka Egbuka would be the first dude I would think of.
You got to evaluate every individual case on its own merit, but I still think there's something to be said about the fact that, it's between Ohio State and LSU for wide receiver U. And the school just continues to churn out guys that produce at an NFL level and have offered returns when you take them in the first round or even further back than that. And when you combine that with the fact that Egbuka has been one of the most consistently praised prospects in this draft, arguably the most relative to just how they have handled themselves in
his maturity,
interviews.
his just intelligence.
I don't know why you would let this guy slip out of the first round.
Yeah, agree.
It doesn't make sense to me. So this is I'm hopeful. I feel like Egbuka more than earned the right to be a first round pick. I think he does. It would be a shame if he didn't get that same level of respect that so many of the guys that he played with at Ohio State during his career, if he didn't get the same honor that they did. Yeah. So I hope that he hears his name called. He deserves to have it. Where he ends up fitting remains to be seen. But I think there's more than a few different potential landing spots late in the draft for him. But yeah, I don't know why you would pass up on a guy like this, given how much consistent ROI there's been from Ohio State players in similar positions or projected to go in similar areas of the draft that play wide receiver in recent years. It seems like a no-brainer to me, and frankly, I feel like some teams are kind of overthinking this in terms of whether or not he's worth it.
What? NFL teams overthinking the NFL draft? I disagree. That's never happened. I do want to talk about the running backs rather. TreVeyon Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but it is interesting to me that Henderson kind of has the slight edge here in terms of where he would go in the draft, particularly with his injury history. Not that I think he's not great. I mean, one of the things that he excels in is one of those things that, you've seen like Saquon Barkley really take it to the next level in the NFL, right? Whereas at Penn State, he was asked to be, the running back, the every down guy. And then in the NFL, his, pass catching abilities, things like that would really allow him to shine. I see that with TreVeyon Henderson and I get it. But I also think that Quinshon Judkins has all the tools that you would want in an NFL running back. And if it's tread on the tires, if that's what people are worried about, I don't know. I think Judkins showed more in the playoff overall in terms of like durability and his ability to, basically do everything that was asked of him. But it's just interesting to me that there's as much daylight between these guys as there is, because, Judkins is like mid to late third round, maybe. And Henderson's like second, which seems a little bit high, I guess. I don't know.
Talking about it out loud with you, it honestly reminds me of the same situation between Simmons and Jackson.
Right.
Where I feel like teams are more preoccupied with the ceiling of one guy as opposed to the NFL readiness of the other guy, even though both of them are talents that presumably deserve to be drafted within the same realm of each other.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Judkins last year, there was a lot of we expected when we going into the season, our expectation was Henderson was going to be the home run hitter and Judkins was going to be the thunder to TreVeyon's lightning.
Right.
And it became very evident very early in the season that Ohio State actually had 2 home run hitters
Yeah.
in their backfield, which kind of really changed the equation in terms of how effective the ground game was going to be, regardless of who was going out there. Both guys have turned into excellent pass blockers, or just blockers generally. Henderson particularly, I think, really metamorphosized into an excellent pass blocker over the course of his Ohio State career. But the thing that really wowed me that I did not expect from Judkins was, I remember against Western Michigan, he had one catch that was like along the sideline that that was for significant gain of yards, and wasn't just like a route in the flat or whatever. This was a downfield, had to run a route. Howard hit him. He made a brilliant catch along the sideline that I remember thinking, I did not know that guy, who I figured was going to be Ohio State's thumper back this year, had downfield receiver ability like that.
Right.
I figured that Henderson was going to be the guy for all that sort of attention. And if both of these guys are bringing that sort of versatility, regardless of who's lining up out there for Ohio State, that really changes the equation of how they're going to be able to attack defenses. He caught, granted, it was a lot of Howard kind of like staying alive and distracting the defense with his eyes in the national championship, but he caught a touchdown pass
he found the hole in the defense and he sat in it.
Yeah.
And then Will Howard found him and, threw across his body.
He caught a downfield touchdown pass in the national championship game against Notre Dame.
And scored, 2 other ones on the ground? I mean,
right.
I mean,
he was arguably the best player other than Howard in that national championship game for Ohio State on offense. So
I would agree with that.
Frankly, I think that Judkins is, when I consider the full body of work for the 2 guys, I still think Henderson probably has the higher ceiling just because of the ability to finish off big plays. But in terms of the guys that are built to succeed consistently at the NFL level, I think that there's similar injury issues to Simmons as there is with Henderson that are maybe kind of being overlooked relative to the ceiling that guy has. And even though it seems like there's some concern about how much Judkins played in college relative to what does he have left for the NFL, I mean, this guy was, I think, I forget who says this. I think it's like a Charles Barkley quote, maybe. I might be getting it wrong, but it's something like, the best ability is availability.
Oh yeah.
And that's what Judkins was at Ole Miss and at Ohio State. He was there when you needed him. Even, I know that he got hurt going into the Oregon game, and that kind of maybe led to the fumble or whatever. But outside of that, it's not like he missed extended time or anything, even with that injury.
Well, and that injury wasn't like, this guy's knee's going to blow out kind of thing, or his ankle's weak or something like that. It was just a hand thing. And you're like, okay, well that sucks.
But it didn't nearly compromise Ohio State's backfield to the extent that Henderson's injuries did at various points during his Ohio State career.
Correct.
So I would think I would rather have Judkins than Henderson, honestly, but I still think both of them deserve to be second, early third round picks.
Right. Interesting. So, I mean, another pair that I think that we tend to kind of group together is JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, but both of them sit behind Tyleik Williams in the draft projections. And I actually have zero problem with that. I think Tyleik is the kind of guy that, like nose tackle and whatnot, that guys in the NFL salivate over. He is a space occupier extraordinaire. And I don't see Sawyer or Tuimoloau getting 10, 15 sacks in the NFL. I don't see them becoming a Bosa, right? Like Nick or like Joey. I don't see that happening. I do see Tyleik Williams having a really long NFL career. So I totally get that. I think he will go before both of those guys, and I think he'll end up having a better overall career. I don't know if you disagree with any of that, but to me, I feel like Sawyer and Tuimoloau are kind of I think they're going to be good, but I think they'll be pieces. I don't expect them to be stars or all pros or anything like that.
I don't know if I ever told the story on here about my run-in with Tyleik Williams when I was about 2 months into my 11 Warriors tenure. I was going to the Buckeye Lake retreat at Matt Gutrich's house, which is actually, I believe, where I met you for the first time.
I didn't go to that one, actually.
Oh, you didn't go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was at the bowl. You might have
seen
me
I
at
met
the
you at the
bowling
thing.
That's right.
Yeah, you were the first guy I talked to that day. Okay, so that was many months after that, in April of the next year, I believe. But I did go to the Buckeye Lake retreat, and I was flying up from South. I think I was flying up from South Carolina. I don't think I was quite in Miami yet because it was in July, and I was still in South Carolina. So I had to go through Dulles, like DC area.
Yeah, Dulles.
Yeah, and this was 2021. So there were still some places, like I think we're still at the point where we were waiting for the all clear, so to speak, relative to COVID. It wasn't lockdown era, but there were still
a lot of shakiness, a lot of nervous.
Right.
Yeah.
So I remember I went to go to the restaurant at Dulles because we had a delay and the crew was late getting the plane in or whatever. We had this massive delay at Dulles and it was just like killing everybody. And like there were like 3 people working at the restaurant, and I was just like, God, what a terrible time to travel. Like the whole airport's understaffed and everything.
Of course.
So we've got a multi-hour delay. And while I'm sitting at my gate eventually, I realize there's a couple people in Ohio State athletic gear that are sitting at the gate. And so I'm starting to wonder, and they look like they could be young college age or whatever. And so I'm starting to wonder and think like, I wonder if there's anybody on the team that is around the DC area that could be flying to Columbus. And so I messaged our guys in Slack and I asked them like, is there anybody? And somebody, I think it was Dan, pointed out to me, it could be Tyleik Williams. I didn't want to take a picture of them or whatever. I didn't really want to bother them or whatever.
Run up on them with like 15 items for them to sign.
Right, because we're all in the middle of an airport delay, so nobody's in a good mood.
Of
and
course.
I don't want to. And
of
this
course.
guy's a freshman and whatever, and nobody really knows how it's going to work out at Ohio State or whatever. But eventually, we don't get into Columbus until like probably 2 a.m. I mean, it was a long delay.
Right.
It was bad. It was probably at least like 2 or 3 hours. But as we're walking to baggage claim, I don't remember, but I said something to him as we were like getting off the plane, and I started talking to him. I told him what I did. I told him what I was doing in Columbus, and he thought I was doing some kind of like NIL thing for like the players. It was like, oh, are you guys having players there or whatever? I'm like, oh no, this is just a thing for the staff.
You're not invited, Ty.
No, I think he thought I was with like Buckeye Scoop or something at first, and I was like, oh god, I need to
backpedal.
I need to have Dan go meet this guy and do damage control for the 11 Warriors brand that I have just soured on Tyleik's opinion. But
nice.
Dan talked to him eventually and said, they were all good. But I remember the thing that I remember asking Tyleik about, because it was like 2 a.m, was like, is Mickey going to call you in tomorrow? Like, are they sensitive to the fact that, you literally just got in?
Yeah.
Like, are they really going to call you in at 5 a.m. to like lift and whatever? And I felt kind of bad that I even put this thought in his head because he hadn't been thinking about it. But he
now he gets to spend the entire plane ride going like, oh.
Well, no. We had landed, so we were in Columbus walking the baggage claim. But I asked him about this, and he looks ahead for a sec, and the thought, and then he just kind of sighs and he goes, "Yeah, he probably will." But I remember thinking the fact that he is mentally prepared,
right?
That Ohio State's strength and conditioning coach is going to make him come in as a true freshman to work out after he's had this ridiculous plane delay on only 3 hours of sleep, that he knows that's still what the expectation is going to be, even at this stage of his career.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I don't know what this guy's ceiling is, but I have a feeling that he's going to at least do something productive for this team one day.
And he ended up being great. I mean, he ended up being like,
he was one of the most understated game records that this program has had.
Absolutely. And if people doubt that, all they have to do is go back and look at all those goal line stands that Ohio State had and what he was able to accomplish, when he had to absolutely give up nothing. He was great. He was fantastic. And I think he's going to earn the position that he gets drafted at. Some of the other guys here, Lathan Ransom, around 100th pick-ish, 105th pick, whatever. I think that's fine. 4th, I think that's appropriate. Will Howard's an interesting one. Some guy has him in the 2nd round. I don't see that happening. But then I feel like
he's the Steelers guy, man. He has to be.
I think he's better than the
still
5th.
Don't have a quarterback. It's either Will Howard or Mason Rudolph, because it doesn't sound like Aaron Rodgers is all the way in on coming back right now.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I feel like he's better than the 5th. I don't know. That'll be a really interesting
John
thing.
Gruden said in his quarterback camp thing, and granted, I'm sure he butters up every prospect that walks in there. Yeah. But he straight up said, he said, I don't know how Will Howard is in QB1 in this draft.
Yeah, I don't.
And
I know how, because Cam Ward has a better arm and has a higher ceiling. But I get it. Like I get it,
but he was throwing against a bunch of ACC defenses.
That's fair. I mean, I get it. But like overall, I think Cam Ward.
Shedeur Sanders does not deserve to go ahead of Will Howard. I'll say that.
I mean, no.
If Shedeur Sanders' last name wasn't Sanders, he would not have his name retired at Colorado, or his jersey number rather retired at Colorado, and he would not be ranked ahead of Will Howard in this draft.
Denzel Burke came back and played himself out of a 3rd or 4th round draft pick and right into a 3rd or 4th round draft pick. And people wanted this to be kind of another, like, every year with him kind of felt like a bounce back year. And like, I thought he played well in the playoff. But I think the problem with him is that a lot of the stuff that you remember about Denzel Burke is, when he didn't play well. And that kind of sucks, because I think the majority of the time he played great. I think he did really, really well. The problem were those lapses, and that's what people are going to really remember with regards to his career. So I don't know.
I mean, he was the biggest reason they lost to Oregon.
Right. I mean, he got destroyed in that game. And then in the second, but that's the crazy thing, because in the second time they played, he was locked down solid. Nothing got completed against him. He was unbelievable.
In a situation where it was obvious Oregon was going to be throwing the ball.
Exactly.
But Ohio State's pass rush was night and day, too, in that game. That just kind of goes to show the relationship the two have. If you're getting pressure, it's much easier for the secondary to do their job. If they're not getting anything, then they're much more susceptible to getting lit up.
Right. And my general point is that people are going to remember, unfortunately, his worst games more than his best games. And I that part of that's the nature of the position, but also I think it's also just kind of how he was perceived.
I mean, he was one of the reasons I thought Oregon was going to beat them a second time, to be perfectly honest. So fair. I can it is a little bit unfair to the full body of work he did at Ohio State, but I would also argue that before this year, and probably even overall, he was one of those guys that his best year was his freshman year.
Right.
I feel like at Ohio State. He got a little bit worse is a strong word, but he hit none of his other years. Yeah. None of his other years at Ohio State were as consistently great as his first year he was here.
Agreed.
So, but I think he'll be a good value pick for middle of the draft for whatever team gets him. And corner's a mercurial position, you know, so he might have some bad games in the NFL too, but I think overall he's going to be I think he can be decent for where he's going to go in this draft.
Some of the other guys who are being looked at, you got Ty Hamilton at DT, Seth McLaughlin obviously at center, Jordan Hancock, Cody Simon kind of rounds out the projection there as the lowest one. Of those guys, do you think any of them has a chance to be kind of a sleeper in the draft, like somebody that's going to be really good?
Yeah, I mean, definitely McLaughlin. I mean,
Yeah.
How much better would his draft stock be if he didn't have that late season injury in practice?
There's such a wide range on him. So I mean, a couple guys have him. Well, one guy has him in the 3rd round. 3 other dudes have him in the 4th, and then he goes all the way down to the 7th for some of the projections.
It's the same story with Ty Hamilton too,
right? And I feel like a lot of it has to do with like injuries or just lack of film or whatever. But like, there's a huge range. Jordan Hancock goes from 3 to 7.
He's the same story.
Yeah, it's really
and honestly.
Wild.
I'm kind of sad that Hancock is leaving, just because I've always felt like that guy was good, but never got the opportunity to show just how great he was.
Yeah.
During his time at Ohio State.
Yeah.
I think you could have taken Igbenogson out of the equation last year for Ohio State, and that secondary wouldn't have missed a beat, frankly. Hancock is that good.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that's a good point. And he would be the number 1 on the team if he had come back, I think.
So I think all 3 of those guys have pretty good opportunity to be productive NFL players. I'm definitely most encouraged by McLaughlin just because of, I think he's being heavily discounted due to the injury. But yeah, I like Hancock a lot too. I think if he ends up being one of those back 2 round, if he ends up falling to the 6th or 7th round, he's going to be a really good investment for any team that gets him in that range.
I agree. So, all right, so that's the draft. We'll be watching, obviously, and talking about it next week. It'll be an interesting first round,
and hopefully G. Scott Jr. is Mr. Immaculate and, or irrelevant.
Mr. Irrelevant,
yeah, Mr. Irrelevant, and gets Ohio State to 60. I just hope there's one. It would be so cool if there's one Ohio State friendly executive that sees that they've got the record tied at 15th, and they're just sitting there.
Just throw them a
these last 7th round picks or whatever, they're grasping at straws anyway. They're like,
Ohio State, that's a good team.
Yeah, and he was a team captain. You're throwing darts at the board, and it's like, is it really that bad to have a guy with that kind of leadership ability that could, Ohio?
You're cutting half.
All these Ohio State tight ends end up being understated, productive players in the NFL, even if none of them end up being like top end talents at the position or whatever. So, I'm not saying he's going to turn into Nick Vannett, but maybe you could do worse than G. Scott Jr. Give him a chance, NFL teams.
That's a ringing endorsement. A couple things before we get to Ask Us Anything. We do want to talk about transfer portal targets a little bit. One guy in particular is this dude Murad Watson, defensive tackle from Syracuse. As a freshman, he was really good. He was really good in run defense. I don't like PFF in general, but they gave him a 77.4 grade in run defense. That's really, really good.
He was a freshman All-American. What more do you need to know?
I mean, that's pretty sick. I feel like that dude has to be a huge
Wasn't there a freshman All-American in the portal last year Ohio State got that ended up being pretty good?
It worked out. Bo Atkinson.
What was that guy's name?
I believe that was Caleb Downs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So going after freshman All-Americans and putting them at Ohio State tends to
not a terrible idea.
Results. Yeah.
Not a terrible idea. Bo Atkinson out of North Carolina. There was been some chatter there that Ohio State's. I mean,
we recorded this Monday night. He visited Ohio State today, apparently.
Yeah. So there you go.
But Watson is visiting Texas tomorrow, apparently. And apparently they've already gotten like 5 other defensive tackles or something in the portal this year. So I hope that somebody brings that to his attention while he's visiting campus, and he doesn't find out about that until he already is committed to the Longhorns. And then he's like, I could have gone to Ohio State and competed for a starting job.
There you go. Other things, Ohio State gymnast Cameron Nelson, he won the NCAA championship in vault. Good for him. We're not going to talk about who won the men's team event. And Ohio State won their first regular season Big Ten men's lacrosse championship, beating Michigan, that team up north.
Not only that game was absurd.
It was absurd.
It was 3-2 at halftime. Michigan goes up 8-4,
8-5,
I think 8-5,
which is 12 minutes
in the third
left.
quarter. So at that point, you're thinking like, oh, this is done. And then the first like 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, Ohio State doesn't score. So you're like, okay, they're
toast.
Like, are they really going to rally here after they gave up 5 goals in the previous quarter? Yeah. And then they rip off 5 goals in the last 6
including
minutes.
A hat trick from one of their guys. So Big Tasty kind of came through in the clutch, even if it was a bad start to the game, and goal. So not bad.
Unbelievable comeback. Very, very dramatic way to win it. Pretty much all of the highlights are up on the article that I wrote. If you want to check that out on 11 Warriors, it should still be. I don't think it's been buried yet by a bunch of other content, but there are a lot of people saying that why doesn't this get the banner when, you know, these random 3-star commits get red banners, right. You know, and I understand it, but I don't have the authority to be going and throwing around red banners willy-nilly on 11 Warriors. So I would have done it if it were up to me. I understand where you guys are coming from.
I don't disagree. I think that's worthy of one.
Quick shout out to I want to make sure that I get the name of the site member correct, because a lot of people were throwing heavy praise on him. Berserker29 apparently has been very fervent in the forums this year about giving people updates about this team. And so there was nobody happier to see Ohio State get their first Big Ten title than Berserker29. And many people in the comments of that story were singing his praises in terms of him regularly updating the community about how this team was doing this season. So nice. Thank you for your efforts, Berserker29.
I agree. That rules. So let's go ahead and do Ask Us Anything. Before we do that, I want to remind you that the 11 Dubcast is sponsored by the Dry Goods Store at 11warriors.com. Shirts, hats, stickers, all kinds of great stuff. Check it out, including our Scoop and Score shirt and our Death to Duck shirt. So I definitely recommend that you guys check this out. They are pretty great. Let's go ahead and do Ask Us Anything. We want to remind you that you can send us questions to Ask Us Anything to dubcast@11warriors.com. Let's go ahead and start with our good friend Alvin, who wants to know, quite simply, what is the best soup?
Oh, crab bisque.
Crab bisque?
Not even close.
Have we been asked this question?
It's possible.
I don't know.
Crab or lobster bisque. Not even close. Not even close.
So I'm lactose intolerant.
That's a go-to steakhouse move for me.
I'm not saying it's bad. I enjoy it. A crab bisque, it's delicious. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's the best soup. I think the best soup is the tortilla soup. I'm a huge fan of that. You got the cheese, you got the beans, you've got the little bits of nachos. I don't know.
Absolutely not.
I think tortilla soup.
You're going to take tortilla soup over crab bisque.
Yeah. I am. I'm a man of the people, George. I'm not some wine and cheeser like you.
You're a Middletown, Ohio boy is what you are.
No, the Middletown soup is just like a bunch of rocks and grass tossed into like a drainage ditch. That's the Middletown soup.
I went to Gibson's Steakhouse a couple of years ago for somebody's birthday in Chicago, and everybody, I was a little disappointed because I got soup as an appetizer, but everybody got their appetizers first, and I didn't get my soup. So everybody got their apps done. And then,
sir, I don't believe I received my soup.
Well, right, exactly. So I'm like, oh, I saw this guy. So and it wasn't just that I didn't realize that when they gave me the soup that there was going to be this whole presentation element. So everybody gets their stuff cleared, and then they bring I'm getting served by myself at the table. So of course the whole conversation stops.
Oh, soup boy eating soup. Yum.
Well, so that's what I was worried was going to happen. But then the waiter bailed me out because he puts the bowl on the table, and then he like drops the bisque in from like so far up, and it just goes down, and the whole table in unison just goes, oh.
That's really funny.
Felt very vindicated. So you can never go. I never get seafood in the Midwest, but This was a very nice steakhouse in Chicago. It was, somebody's birthday. I'm like, I'm getting a lobster bisque, and it was great. It's very, very hard to go wrong. I've only been to one place in my entire life that has ever messed it up, so can't go wrong. Lobster crab bisque, best soup bar none. Get out of here with your tortilla soup.
I like tortilla soup. I think it's good. Now, I think versatility wise, I think tomato soup's great, but yeah, crab bisque. Like, I get it. I'm not saying it's bad soup. Next question. This is from Joshua F. What's normal at 3 p.m. but terrifying at 3 a.m.? A fart that isn't yours in public.
right here, baby.
Waffle House.
Right here.
But
now I'll go there at 3 a.m. I don't care, but most people are terrified to do that.
I think that's an excellent. No, you're right. That's an excellent point. Museums. I think museums are good. Any kind of art museum.
Oh yeah, that's a great.
If
answer.
I was in a museum at 3 a.m., I think I would just like hide in a corner.
That's an excellent answer. Especially wax museums.
Oh my god,
I've never been to one of those.
No, those are terrifying no matter what.
Go, but
those are awful. I hate wax museums with every fiber of my being. And at night, I would just start busting all of them because I would be afraid that one of them would like come to life and kill me.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way. Absolutely not. I would cry. That would be the worst thing in the world to me.
That's a great answer.
Thank you. This is from Kevin, who says, guys, when do you think Coach Day will pick a quarterback for the upcoming season? When do you think that trigger will be pulled? Now, we were afraid last year that it was going to be like well into the a couple games in the season or something like that. That did not happen. They made that decision the week of the game, and it seemed like everything was copacetic, and they went with it. I really hope that's what ends up happening this season.
Yeah, I would imagine they probably are going to go with saying eventually, but I think there will probably be a bit of gamesmanship from Day relative to
especially with Texas.
Just kind of right.
Yeah.
Then that's what it is making sure that Texas prepares for the possibility of Keenholz. I would think that they're probably not going to announce the guy that we all assume is going to be the guy until the day before or at the very least the week of. So
that's where I'm at.
It's going to be drawn out, but at the same time, I think we all kind of know where this is headed at this point.
I think so too.
Some ridiculous setback in fall camp.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's basically how it's going to play out. I think they'll wait as long as they can, but it will be pretty obvious before then who the guy is. So, probably not official announcement until when they do the coaches show or whatever the week of. But I think you'll probably know ahead of time. So that's Ask Us Anything. Thank you guys for sending those in. We'll keep answering them. A couple things before we get out of here. First of all, Michigan's spring game wasn't even broadcast. And then it turned out that there was a reason for that. Because apparently Bryce Underwood, their $12 million man, did not have a very good spring practice. Now, I've seen clips. You've seen stuff online of him. I forget what the official stat line was for him.
I'll tell you what it was.
Oh, give me.
I wrote it up. So bit of context here going into this. A lot of vitriol, very hotly contested between both fan bases in terms of, how good is Bryce Underwood? Because the Michigan guys who, are applying cognitive dissonance at every level of their football program right now are saying, oh my God, he was so good. One account on Twitter had a viral post this week that said quite literally, Bryce Underwood has some of the nicest balls you will ever see relative to his practice footage. So that's the kind of buttering up, so to speak, that we're dealing with in terms of
glazing, one might say.
That excellent way to put it. Much more well put than the way that tweet that went viral, I think intentionally phrased it. But then the other thing that came out of it was there was this photo that emerged after, and this is what a lot of the pessimists use to discredit where Bryce Underwood is at, where Underwood had, a bit of the Zeke crop top thing going on. He was taking a picture with Blake Corum was at that practice flexing and whatever. And he had a little bit of a tummy, a belly, if you will. And, who am I to judge such
Certainly
a thing? And
not
I didn't I didn't
40-year-old Johnny Ginner
but
would never.
There were a bunch of Ohio State fans in particular that were, throwing around the allegations that this guy was enjoying a bit too many of those cheeseburgers that Jim Harbaugh himself is so fond of.
Uh-huh.
So lot of anticipation for how Underwood was going to look in his on-field debut, so to speak, for Michigan outside of practice. And the fact that the game was being delayed a week, delayed in terms of a TV broadcast for a week, made it was a curious decision. And Michigan was claiming that it was something related to the portal. Bizarre decision, to say the least.
Yeah.
And by the way, relative to Ohio State spring game attendance, Michigan only had 40,000 people at this spring game themselves. Whether or not that had, but it's Easter weekend. People are out visiting families or whatever. It's a little bit of a different situation than the one Ohio State had a week prior. In any event, Bryce Underwood, not a great day for a guy that was given 8 figures to flip from LSU to the school that he grew up, or at least attended high school, about 15 miles down the road from in Michigan. Bryce Underwood was, prior to the final play of the spring game, 11 for 25 for less than 100 yards passing.
It's bad.
And he threw an arm punt of
the
an interception.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
The crowd reaction, frankly, was hilarious. Audible groans and gasps of shock in terms of how bad it was. And
I will say though, that pick by the defensive player was sick. It was good.
But it's not like it was a contested catch or anything.
Oh, no, because there wasn't a wide receiver within 20 yards.
He definitely had to track the ball down and make a play in order to go get it. And it was a miscommunication between Underwood and his receiver. It's his first game action. It's whatever.
He should still be in high school. All those caveats apply. However,
it was a very aesthetically displeasing pick.
Yeah.
He had his stat line heavily inflated by the last play of the game, where Michigan opted to run a reverse flea flicker from their own 12-yard line that resulted in an 88-yard touchdown pass to a Michigan tight end that otherwise. So the final score of the game,
by the way,
if that play doesn't happen, move. The final 100%. Why are you burning that in the spring game?
Well, not only that, but you're the defense. It's the last play. You're here in an exhibition game that you don't actually want to play in. And then you're like, okay, I guess we're walking off the field. Oh, okay, you're going to do a reverse flip. Thank you. Thanks. Make us look like, a-hole. Make us look like we suck. That's just...
Yeah, if you're going to run that, at least let Chase Herbstreit throw that. But we'll get to that family in a minute. Anyway, Underwood also 2 delay of game penalties, took a couple different sacks. He did finish with 3 carries for 17 yards. I don't know if that's factoring in the sacks that he took and if he had a long run to offset those. But it was a lot of people that were in attendance described his throws as errant and both not but both high and wide in terms of his misses. So he was inaccurate, completed less than 50% of his throws, threw the ball 25 times prior to that flea flicker at the end of the game and couldn't even get 100 yards passing. And if you take that flea flicker touchdown out of the equation, the spring game ends 10-0 for Michigan. So largely unproductive afternoon of scrimmage football for Michigan. But especially Michigan, relative to what happened with Ohio State, even with the Ryan Day scoring system. But point is, I mean, it's not like that they were preparing to not televise the game because they expected the game to not be very encouraging. But I don't know how you come away from that kind of an afternoon based on how it has been described encouraged for where Michigan is at right now going into next season.
Yeah, offensively,
and it will be it'll be interesting to see what the tape displays when the game does air on Big Ten Network.
Right. And I think defensively they're still going to be solid. I mean, their defensive line looks ridiculous again. Their defensive backs, there's going to be some shoring up they have to do there. Their defense will be fine though. I think they'll have a very good defense. Offensively, it's going to be really interesting because, a lot of people are like comparing it to how Tavion St. Clair played. And these are guys in similar positions, highly rated quarterbacks who should still be in high school. The difference is Tavion St. Clair is not the guy being touted as the presumptive starter, right? And so that changes a lot. But at least
for as pedestrian at best as Underwood looked, given where he's at, people were saying Jaden Davis looked even worse.
Yeah,
and that is presumably the guy that is in the most equipped position to compete with Underwood for the starting job.
What about the progeny of one Kirk Herbstreit? I think people are underestimating how great this 0-star court. No, I don't. We'll see.
I have to say, when that picture came out of him, I thought it was so funny. Apparently, the lanyard that Herbstreit was wearing, that's necessary to get on the field.
I'm sure
I credit him for not wearing actually any official Michigan gear, but I did think it was interesting that he didn't make more of an effort to conceal that.
I think it was made sure that he is looks like he's been spending 30 hours a day under a law.
Somebody did say that he was getting dangerously close to hot dog skin, which is what I love describing as one of the classical traits of a crispy critter in the state of Florida. So he definitely looked like he was getting some sun. He certainly wasn't getting it from Michigan because it was a cloudy day in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
And given the fact that the game wasn't on TV and a lot of it was a mixed bag, I described the game as a cloudy one overall for Michigan.
I will say that as two extremely pasty guys ourselves, maybe that's just jealousy.
Speak for yourself, man. You should go see my picture on LinkedIn if you think I'm pasty.
Oh, there you go.
That's from when I was tanning in Florida every day. I look like a totally different person.
Nice. I'll check that one out. Also, real quick, NCAA looks like they're going to try to do a timeout rule and fight against fake injuries. That'll be fun. I hope it actually works. And then finally,
I don't think it will.
It's not going to work.
They didn't adopt the better one that was proposed by the Football Coaches Association 2 months ago. That
they actually give the player the injury that they're faking?
Well, no. That one
they
was...
have somebody come out and just kneecap a dude?
If the player gets hurt, they have to sit out the rest of the possession. Unless they were injured on a play that was a penalty on the defense or the offense or whoever the offending party was.
Right.
Or if you're a coach, you can burn a timeout and then that would restore the player's eligibility to return to the field for that possession. I think that's a great way to do it.
That would have been. I agree. I like that a lot.
That is not what the NCAA decided.
No, it was. Yeah, no.
The NCAA took a much worse approach that, frankly, some people are worried is going to penalize players that might actually be hurt.
Right.
So now it's the scenario that I can see that concerns me is, and I've seen this watching like the UFC, for example, where sometimes the response to a concussion is delayed. Right. Where a guy will get hit and then it doesn't even really register that they're like going lights out for like 10 or 15 seconds and then they finally go like fall over. My worry is, a player is going to, after the ball has already been spotted, display something like concussion-like symptoms.
Oh, I see what you're saying. And then right.
Instead of getting that player the treatment that they need on the field, that's going to result in a situation where they either don't come off the field immediately because they don't want to get penalized for a timeout, or they do get the treatment that they need, and a team has already lost all their timeouts. They have to take the time, yeah. And so they have to take the delay of game penalty.
Right, exactly.
So at some point this season, that it feels inevitable that a situation like that is going to come up, and then people are going to be clamoring for this rule to be amended again.
Right.
The NCAA Rules Committee said that they were going to consider the one that the Football Coaches Association proposed 2 months ago. I don't know why they didn't just adopt that. I don't know why
because they don't want somebody else telling them how to
we have to do our own unique take on it
right.
that nobody likes.
Last thing, farewell to Lee Corso. He is retiring after a final college game day in August. Big part of my life, my college football viewing life growing up. And I guess not really growing up because game day started when I was in my teens. But
but
in
college institution for me. Pretty much.
I mean, the guy's been around forever. He was a huge part of game day. Obviously, I think it's been a long time coming.
It's
at this
well
point.
Past due.
Yeah. But I do hope that he gets to go out on a high note because, he's been such an institution, such a huge part of game day and that the college football experience that it's going to be sad when he's gone. When he's no longer on game day and doing what he's doing. So
yeah, it's been kind of an impossible situation for all parties involved in recent years.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
He's had some pretty uncomfortable moments the last handful of seasons on the desk. For all the ire that has come Kirk Herbstreit's way from the lunatic fringe, I think the way that he has kind of tried to shepherd Herbstreit to the end here is something that he is.
They have a very real, authentic bond. Like those guys.
I don't think that he gets enough credit for how much he has done to keep that guy in the position that he's been in, given the fact that so many people have said
Herbstreit is really good. He's really good at covering for him on game day.
Absolutely.
When Corso loses the plot a little bit, Kirk has been really good at seamlessly keeping the conversation going and keeping everything up. And so you can really tell the connection between those two guys. It's going to be really sad.
And it speaks to the type of person that Herbstreit really is, even if we have our grievances with him in terms of his support of Ohio State at this point.
No, I would agree with that. I think it's pretty cool what he's done.
Yeah.
And, Corso too, that's a guy who I think does kind of deserve to go out on his own terms. I also just kind of wish that it was it wasn't a half decade or more of going having real concern for the guy while you're watching him on TV. And so, we'll have one more rodeo here. It'll be on all likelihood an Ohio State game.
Yeah.
And
so most people are assuming that it would be poetic for him to start and end with picking the Brutus headgear. So
I think that would be great. And
I would like to see it.
It'd be awesome to see this thing come full circle. And, like I said, props to him for being such a fun, engaging, legendary part of, a thing that really set the tone for college football.
I will say, and I don't, I'll try to pivot out of this into something more positive because I don't want to end the show on a super negative note, but I am, given how much he held around, even in the face of a lot of people saying that he needs to hang it up.
Mm-hmm.
I am kind of worried that, there's a lot of people in their elder years when they're in a position like this are holding on to something like this longer than they should, just kind of because it's what keeps them together.
Mm-hmm.
And when they finally do lose that, everything just kind of falls apart. I think I think back to when Joe Paterno passed away shortly after he had to step down from the Penn State job. I am kind of worried that there could be a similar effect with Corso here, which is part of the reason why I haven't been super eager.
I mean, and I get that. And he's obviously he's going to be 90 here soon. But also, I don't know. I mean, otherwise he may not be great on TV, but he seems like he's enjoying the hell out of it. And he seems like he's in pretty good health in general. And I don't know. I hope he sticks around for a long time. And you still see appearances from him on game day because, like I said, he's still an institution. The number of crazy clips that there are, that's what people forget, right? people forget how unbelievably entertaining he was on game day and has been on game day. Like where he dropped the
that
F-bomb.
last supercut of all of his
It's
craziest
so good.
moments at the desk is going to
so
be
good.
It's
Him
going to
shooting
have
off the
it's going to have
the gun.
people laughing and crying and going through the whole array of emotions.
He's had an incredible career.
He's been an institution in this sport, frankly, for almost my entire life.
And here's the other thing. There's a lot of other dudes who have that role in other sports and even in other countries and whatnot. And they turn into cranky, mean, bitter, crappy people. That's not Lee Corso. Lee Corso has always been fun and like positive. And even, again, like even now, a really just like,
he has always been the guy that took a picture of the scoreboard after Indiana went up 6-0 on Ohio State.
Hell yeah.
Back when he was coaching.
Hell yeah.
He has never lost that part of his personality.
No, and that dude, and he rules. And so we're gonna miss him a lot on game day, and more power to him. So anyway, that's the Dubcast for this week. We'll be back next week. We'll break down the NFL draft and we'll talk about all the good stuff. But until then, I'm Johnny.
I'm George.
And we'll see you next time.
Take care, folks.